Let me tell you this horrifying, gruesome story in the Bible where God tells people to massacre all these people. Yeah, it's not what you think. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So there's a lot of stories like these in the Old Testament, and particularly when I'm talking about is in Numbers chapter 31. It's crazy. There's a war called the Midianite War, and in the Midianite War, Israel wins. They send their troops out to battle, they win, and then they come back, and Moses asks the troops, wait a second, you left the women alive? And they're like, well, yeah. And Moses says, no, go back, kill all of the children and kill all of the women except for those who are virgins, and then take all of the spoils and let's divide them up. And that's what they do. They divide them up. There's a ton of spoils. Some of it goes to pay people's salary basically in the church. And it is horrifying. I mean, so part of what's happening here, the sort of scholarly academic consensus is that this actually didn't happen. The idea is that what's called the priestly writer in academic world made this story, created this story to explain to people how God was going to provide for them and how God was going to provide for worship. And that's fine. But there are some stories that have the same kind of motif that do seem to have happened, at least in part. So really, the question is why make God out to be some sort of homicidal maniac? And this is where cultural knowledge really begins to help, because what we see here is actually the Midianite War. And war, the way that war is waged, is a product of cultural values and technology, right? So how it is that people fight and win wars is something that changes over time. And what you see here is actually the way war was waged in that part of the world in that time. And so it's really important when we're looking at the Bible to take it seriously, not literally, and to do the thing that we do where we look at it not through our cultural values and our cultural lens, but try to do our best to look through it through the cultural values and lens of the people who wrote it and who were first reading it. And so the people who originally heard it would have said, oh, this was a war. They won. There would not be a huge amount of surprise. It was not great that they killed all of those people. That was a little bit unusual, but that was not out of the question in that part of the world. So once you look at it through that cultural lens and you understand what's going on, then that's when you can say, okay, are there spiritual beliefs in here that can work for me? And I think there might be a couple. I'm being completely honest, and I want to kind of violate one of my own rules here. I want to look at that and say, I think no matter what, throughout history, really that kind of violence and homicide, all of that is not good. And we really want to be a people of peace. So there's part of it that I want to say, sometimes you can be in a violent culture and get sort of desensitized to the violence, and then you start accepting violent things as okay and doing more violent things than you normally would because you've sort of been desensitized to it. And so I think the first thing is to say, don't let the culture desensitize you to stuff that's actually wrong, throughout history, wrong. And the other thing that academics say, and I think is a stretch, but they say that this is partly about when you come together as a community, you help understand your identity, both as a community and as an individual. And so with that, I think engaging in our communities and kind of leaning into those relationships and getting more involved helps us not only kind of gel as a community, but also understand who we are.